Salawat. The sun is beating down and the tongues are dry. A young warrior watches his lonely father cry. For there is no one to help him in this empty land, no one to support the message of this thirsty man. Ali Akbar cannot take his wounded father's pain, so he begs for permission to fight and be slain, to fight the enemies and defend the true message of Islam. For his face shone with light and was a reminder of Muhammad. Hussein would look at his face when he missed his beloved. Yet Akbar knows his mission is to defend the religion. He rides out to the battlefield after getting permission. He fights like his grandfather and attacks the opposition. Yet when Hussein looks up at Akbar is no longer in position. Hussein watches the enemy pierce into Akbar's chest. Now Hussein will know he will have to endure the hardest test. As he runs to Akbar, Fatima's son falls to the floor. In the heavens she feels the pain, son that she bore. He arrives at the wounded body and hugs his son tight as he begins to remove the spear from his light. Hussein cries with ease, "You lifted the gate of Khaybar. Give me strength to remove this weapon, O Haydar." Hussein will embrace the body of Akbar and begin to weep, but Akbar smiles as he knows his grandfather he will soon meet. "O Hazrat Ali Akbar, your memory we keep in our tears and prayers forever deep. Your sacrifice is a lesson so profound in the annual bravery, and your name is crowned." Mommy, you did so good.
दुरूद भेजिए मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद। बोलना। आशूर की शब सरवर ने कहा, मासूम सकीना सो जाओ। आशूर की शब सरवर ने कहा, मासूम सकीना सो जाओ। हो जाएगा कल एक हश्र बपा, मासूम सकीना सो जाओ। पानी के लिए कल निकलेगा अब्बास मशको अलम लेकर, वापस वो नहीं आएगा। मासूम सकीना सो जाओ। चादर भी तुम्हारी छीनेंगे, क़ैमे भी जलाए जाएंगे। कल होगी बहन भाई से जुदा मासूम सकीना सो जाओ। नन्ना सा तेरा भाई असगर मक़तल को प्यासा जाएगा। छिद जाएगा तीरे सितम से गला मासूम सकीना सो जाओ। जी भर के तुझे मैं देख तो लूं सीने पे मैं अपने सुला तो लूं। कल मेरा गला कट जाएगा मासूम सकीना सो जाओ। सफदर का जिगर फट जाता है ये सोच के हाल आबिद का। सफदर का जिगर फट जाता है ये सोच के हाल आबिद का। गर्दन में है तौक और शाम चला मासूम सकीना सो जाओ। आशूर की शब सरवर ने कहा मासूम सकीना सो जाओ। दुरूद भेजो मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद।
पर मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सलावत।
है जान अब लबों पर बरछी न खींचना बोले पिदर से अकबर बरछी न खींचना बोले पिदर से अकबर बरछी न खींचना। बाबा नजर को फिर लो दम टूटने लगा बरछी के फल से खून है दिल का रुका हुआ उबलेगा खून ज़मीं पर बरछी न खींचना, बोले पिदर से अकबर, बरछी न खींचना। सांसें उखड़ रही तो मदहम है नब्ज़ भी, करते हो आह हमको है ताकीद सब्र की। कहते हो थाम के जिगर, बरछी न खींचना, बोले पिदर से अकबर, बरछी न खींचना। अकबर पुकारे बाप से, दिल को संभालिए, टूटी सिना कलेजे में रहने ही दीजिए। निकलेगा साथ में जिगर, बरछी न खींचना, बोले पिदर से अकबर, बरछी न खींचना। मौला ने याली कहा, दिल को संभाल कर, फिर खुद ही लड़खड़ा गए, बरछी निकाल कर। कहता रहा जवां पिसर, बरछी न खींचना, बोले पिदर से अकबर, बरछी न खींचना। रेहान साथ बरछी के, दिल भी निकल पड़ा, पढ़ते रहे हुसैन भी, तादेर मरसिया। माँ कहती आई नंगे सर, बरछी न खींचना, बोले पिदर से अकबर, बरछी न खींचना। और मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सलवात।
सलवात।
किसी का खाने उम्मीद बे चराग न हो, जवान बेटे का दिल को पिदर के दाग न हो। हजार बाग लुटे पर खिजा ये बाग न हो, पिसर के गम से परेशान दिलो, पिसर के गम से परेशान दिलो, दिमाग न हो। फलक बला शहे करबला पर टूटा है मुसाफिरी में
बराबर कला,
मुसाफिरी में बराबर
कलाल छूटा है।
वो लाल जिसको ना पहुँचे कोई दुरेशवार, वही दे असर शबाहत में अहमदी मुख्तार, हमेशा मिसले अली रोज़दार शब्बेदार, शुजाओ मुत्तक़ियो खुशमिज़ाज, शुजाओ मुत्तक़ियो खुशमिज़ाज, ये सब कमाल मिले ज़ेरे खाक एक दिन में तमाम हो गए
18 साल,
तमाम हो गए 18 साल
के सिन में।
बतूल कहती थी फरियाद या अली फरियाद, मेरी बहू हुई बर्बाद या अली फरियाद, बजाए रहम है बेदाद या अली फरियाद, खुदा के वास्ते
तो दादिया,
खुदा के वास्ते
तो दादिया
दुहाई यूसुफ़े आले अबा को मारा है, जवा को मारा है, जवा को मारा है,
खुदा को मारा है।
लिखा है बता की जूही सदाई, हुसैन इमाम के चेहरे पे मुर्दनी छाई, वो आह की के जरिए रसूल थर्राई, रवाना हो गई अश्कों के साथ बीनाई, सवार दोषे पैगंबर की आस टूट गई, इन्हाने सब्र को
थामी लगा,
इन्हाने सब्र को
थामी लगा, छूट गई।
पुकारते हैं पिसर को पिसर नहीं आता, जिगर में दर्द है लखते जिगर नहीं आता, कोई रफीक़े शहे बैरोबर नहीं आता, तुम्हारे भाई
को रास्ता नज़र,
तुम्हारे भाई
को रास्ता नज़र नहीं आता।
पिसर के गाम में खुजादा मेरा हलाक हुआ, बसा बसाया
घर 59 बरस,
बसा बसाया घर 59 बरस
का खाक हुआ।
यहाँ तो फिज़ाएं करती थी दर्द की तकरीर, असाए उठाकर उधर चले शब्बीर, अंधेरा सामने आँखों के और दिल तकदीर, हर एक बार ये नारा के आ जनाबे अमीर, कभी उठे कभी सुल्तान मशरक़ैन गिरे, लिखा है ये के बहत्तर जगह, लिखा है ये के बहत्तर जगह
हुसैन गिरे।
बादाम पटहरते थे शाह तश्न गुलों हवा में सूंघते थे अपने लाल की खुशबू ज़मीं पर बैठ के गाहें बहाते थे आंसू तलाश करते थे हाथों से लाश को हर सू जो कोई पूछता ते क्या हुजूर ढूंढते हैं तो रोके कहते थे आंखों का नूर तो रोके कहते थे आंखों का नूर ढूंढते हैं कहाँ हुसैन ने रोकर तुम्हें नहीं मालूम हमारे घर में है महशर तुम्हें नहीं मालूम मिटी शबी है पैगंबर तुम्हें नहीं मालूम छोटा हुसैन से अकबर तुम्हें नहीं मालूम रुलाने को ये इमामे उमम से पूछते हो छुरी फिरा के कलेजे पे छुरी फिरा के कलेजे पे से पूछते हो पुकारा शिम्र के कोई नहीं बताने का बड़ा सवाब है सादात के रुलाने का न जिंदा छोड़ेंगे बच्चा भी इस घराने का इरादा है अली असगर के खून बहाने का जो तीर पारो नन्हे गले से ईद करे तुम्हारी गोद में शशमाए को तुम्हारी गोद में शशमाए को शहीद करे
Salawat. First, as mentioned, people are sitting by the shoes and by the bathroom, so we ask anybody who's already here, please move forward with the salawat. Wali Rizvi from the Hussein organization would like to talk about the blood drive and the annual Julus. Please welcome him with the loud salawat.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. For those of you who don't know, my name is Wali, and I am part of the local Hussein group. The purpose of me coming up here is really talk about the Julus. Tomorrow is the 10th of Muharram, and we are in Chicago incredibly blessed to have a procession that happens on the day of 10th of Muharram. This is the only procession in North and South America, from my knowledge, that happens on the day of Muharram, at least of its size. It's been happening for about 45 years. Unfortunately, the reason I'm here is because the performance, the way we basically approach the general public is not up to mark. So for that reason, I'm here. Julus is incredibly relevant, and it is a great attractor. Everybody who sees the Julus asks, what's going on? What is this about? It's a great opportunity to spread the word and message of Imam Hussein. We as a team, me personally, as well as those in my teams, we've been doing this for 10 years. And Julus is effective. We know from 2019, which is pre-COVID, and from 2022, pre-COVID, we have numbers. Every Muharram Julus, 10th of Muharram Julus, we have about more than 1,000 conversations with the general public. more than 1,000 conversations, and more than 500 website hits on husain.org within 90 to 120 minutes in that time span. So the more people that show up in the Julus, it very directly results in a direct impact. So if you're thinking, oh, I'm going to go to the Julus, how is it going to impact? We have data to support that if you show up, it's going to have an impact. Like your family coming there is going to increase the numbers. Increasing the number of people who show up at the Julus is going to increase the awareness, the website hits, the conversations that we've had. We have data for it. So if anybody has any confusion about that, about the effectiveness of Julus, we have data to basically prove that. So with that, it is incredibly important that we deliver short, concise, strong, and simple message about what the story of Karbala and the story of Imam Hussain is. Unfortunately, that does not happen very often. There are people who like to help. They help us during the Julus, giving out flyers, but the messaging is not same across. So our team, we've developed scripts, we've developed bullet points that if you volunteer tomorrow in the Julus, you'll get those in person, or if you could go to our Instagram, you can see those things. So highly encourage you to go to our Instagram page, see what the messaging is, the concise and simple and consistent messaging that's on our Instagram. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us on our Instagram page. So with that, first request, please show up to the Julus in as many numbers as possible. If you have any questions, if you need messaging, if you need any collateral, please reach out to our team. With that, I would also like to mention that IEC is having a blood drive right after Ashura. For those of you who do not know, Hussain did a global blood drive last year, and that did break the world record of most blood donations in a single day, globally. So anyone who donated to that had a global impact, and now when you will donate in IEC, you're gonna carry that impact. With that, for all of you, a reminder, Hussain does an annual back to school event. This year we will be doing the 8th annual event on 12th of August. So we'd love for you to volunteer over there. So I'm gonna close and really hope I'm gonna get to see all of you at the Julus tomorrow. Really encouraging all of you, and if you have any questions, I'm here, the rest of the team is here, Akil is here, Mohammad Bilgarami, there are volunteers on the ladies' side. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. Thank you so much. Salawat.
Jazakallah khair wali bhai. More information can be found on whoishussain.org. Now I'd like to go over tomorrow's schedule. Majlis Azan Hazrat Ali Akbar will be at 3:30 a.m. led by Maulana Yasir Naqvi. Salatul Fajr will be at 4:02 a.m. Amal will be at 8 a.m. The bus will leave at 9 for Julus, and everybody else who is going should leave around that time as well. The address is Thompson Center, 100 West Randolph Street, Chicago, Illinois. The Julus itself will begin at 10 a.m. Salatul Jummah will be at 1 p.m. English Majlis will begin at 2:45, and Urdu Majlis will begin at 3:30. Matam and the procession that will be held outside will begin at 4 p.m. Fakha Shikni will be at 4:30. Ladies Majlis will begin at 6 p.m. and Salatul Maghrib will be at 8:33 p.m. And finally, Majlis Sham Ghariba will be at 8 or 9 p.m. Sorry. So with all this in your mind, please make sure you're on time, or even better, early, so it's not chaotic out there. Please remember to use the designated doors to reduce any unnecessary commotion. English Majlis, please use the old hall doors or the west entrance, and Urdu Majlis, use the standard new entrance. I've also received direct announcements from the IEC management, which I'm instructed to share. Please familiarize yourself with the exits in case of emergency. In our case, we have this door and those two doors over there. Please do not panic and exit the building calmly. Alhamdulillah, IEC has organized a medical emergency team with 30 medical professionals who will respond to any medical emergency. We respectfully ask non-medical mu'mineen not to interfere in treating or attending an emergency, And 3, be extremely respectful and humble in treating each other during Noha and Matam. Tonight, Dr. Mehdi Hazari will be talking about is if human bias is a cause of our undoing. Please welcome Shaykh Hazari with the loud salawat.
Last time, please come as close to the stage as possible. We can also accommodate people on the stage, please. Please come as close as possible. Someone's telling you not to say that. I guess the mic's tired of me making this announcement, so. Salawat par Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
على حب فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. لتعجيل فرج الإمام صاحب العصر والزمان صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد. الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا رسول الله وعلى أهل بيتك المعصومين الأبرار الميامين المظلومين المضطهدين. السلام عليك يا مولاي وابن مولاي يا أبا عبد الله يا غريب يا مظلوم يا عطشان كربلاء. ما خاب والله من تمسك بكم أمن من لجأ والتجأ إليكم. يا ليتنا فيا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي فنفوز والله فوزا عظيما. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن المنافقين في الدرك الأسفل من النار ولن تجد لهم نصيرا إلا الذين تابوا وأصلحوا واعتصموا بالله وأخلصوا دينهم لله فأولئك مع المؤمنين وسوف يؤتي الله المؤمنين أجرا عظيما. آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل. والسلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. عظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمصابنا بسيدنا ومولانا بعبد الله الحسين وجعلنا الله تعالى وإياكم من الطالبين بثأره بين يدي الإمام المنصور المؤيد المهدي من آل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. My dear brothers and sisters, tonight I will try to wrap up to some degree the series of discussions that we've engaged in over the last few nights. And I think you have probably reached your limit of how many studies you want to hear about and the data that I keep bringing up. I have only a couple more of those tonight, so bear with me. But hopefully we can see the task in front of us, and more importantly, recognize what has been done before us. Because much has been laid down as a foundation for insan to work upon. And society is built with foundation that, even though sometimes on the surface it is removed or deteriorated or eroded away, it remains firm under the surface. And you see more often than not that that's the case. Through great upheaval, the vast majority of human institutions get washed away, yet it is only the basic and most standard elements that Allah has chosen to be timeless that persist. And so the question becomes for us that, are we part of that standard that God has created? Or are we of those who get washed away when the tides roll through? More importantly, I think it begs the question that, are we doomed to failure? And to some degree, you see the state of the world. Today, we saw videos of bombing in Damascus at the shrine of Sayyida Zainab alayhi salatu wassalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. And this is nothing new, yet it continues to wound our hearts. So, is the human race, are we as a creation of God doomed to fail? Essentially. That we struggle, yet the world in which we live, the circumstances that have been sort of created for us, and our own weaknesses and predilections have set it up so that there is nothing but disaster waiting at the end of it. And I can't say that I want to venture an answer to this question, but I can say that oftentimes when you look at the world, the answer is yes, we are doomed to fail. That's not to say that you live a pessimistic life and you consider life to be nothing but a big giant disaster. No, because Allah is hope. Imam Hussein is hope. Imam Mehdi ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif is hope. That we know that even in the darkest moments of humanity, that there is always a flicker of light somewhere. And that the truth, although it has been covered over, it has been veiled in some way, it has not been destroyed, because truth can never be destroyed. Truth is always there. It is da'im and baqi. It is persistent and it remains long term. It's perpetual. So we have to consider that. And you see in society, one of the very important aspects that determines whether we succeed or not as human beings, as the creation of God. And that is the rise of individuals, certain individuals who take a prominent role. And you see any institution is this way. Whether it is a business institution, an educational institution, a religious organization, the people who rise to the front, who come to the front, who take ownership or leadership, let's call it, much of what is determined in terms of success is based on the quality and the characteristics of these people. And hence, to understand these individuals is to know whether we are really at risk of failure or not. And you see a lot of this example in the lives of the Ahl al-Bayt alayhim as-salatu was-salam. And I urge you, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. I urge you to study the lives of the Imams. We study a lot, obviously, the life of Imam Ali alayhi salam. We study the life of Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam. Imam Hussein we know. Imam Zain al-Abidin even we know. Imam Baqir alayhi salam, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam we know. And then after Imam al-Sadiq we know less. And I'm not saying we know less because history has reported less. No, history has given us enough. Is that we have not read. And particularly when we come to the time of Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam, Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam, Imam al-Askari alayhi salam, we have done very little to understand their lives. Yet there is so much in their lives and in their history that points to insan, how insan is. And whether insan is able to go down a path of success, especially if there is a foundation underneath. So you know that after Imam Rida is brought up towards Khurasan, Ma'mun al-Abbasi had assumed power how? He was in Khurasan, he was in Persia, whereas his brother Al-Amin was in Baghdad. Now, both of them had the same father, Harun al-Rashid. However, Amin's mother was a true Abbasi. She was an Arab. She came from the Abbasi tree. Some say from the brother of Mansur al-Dawaniqi. So we know she is the descendant of the Abbasids. She is pure. So Amin was a pure Arab from both sides, mother and father, and connected to the Abbasid tree. So the tribe of the Abbasids who were in Baghdad particularly, they held him in esteem. Why? Because he represented the pure lineage to them. Ma'mun, on the other hand, his mother was Persian. And he was second to his brother as decided by his father. That his father said, when I die, it will go to my son Amin, and after Amin it will go to his brother Ma'mun. Now he didn't want that. Ma'mun did not want that. Yet you know that Ma'mun had something sort of in his favor when it came to power. Many years before, in approximately the 130s after Hijrah, when the Banu Umayyah, the Banu Marwan, they were weakening, they were becoming weak, the Banu Abbas jumped on them, pounced on them. And they pounced on them because of forces that came out of Khurasan. So they were able to come out of Khurasan, use this support, using the name of Ahl al-Bayt, calling themselves the supporters of the Shia, and remove the Banu Umayyah. So now, Ma'mun uses those same forces, and he attacks. And he has with him a man named Harthama ibn A'yun. Harthama is a great general. He comes, he lays siege to Baghdad. Amin is there. They catch him. The history describes that after laying siege, one day, Amin is by a river somewhere with his men. He's not paying attention. He gets ambushed. They catch him and they kill him. They kill him. So Amin has been killed. He's been removed. Ma'mun has the position. Within this army of Harthama that was on the side of Ma'mun to put Ma'mun back into position, there were many men who ostensibly were Shia, right? Because these are people who are coming out of what is now Iran, people from Iraq, people who see that this is the family of Rasulullah from his uncle Abbas and have joined. Amongst them was a man, his name was Abu Saraya, Shaybani. Abu Saraya, he was part of the army of Harthama ibn A'yun and had joined in the fight to remove Amin. After Amin is removed, Ma'mun takes over. We see that there is now a new regime under Ma'mun. However, things are starting to get difficult because Ma'mun's regime is very strict in the beginning. It's following in the old tradition. People are being taxed. Money is being demanded with force. People are angry. One day, this man, Abu Saraya, he's walking in the street. He sees an old lady. She's a Hashemiyya. She is from the descendants of Rasulullah. She's very old, very poor. There's a cart going by, and there are dates falling from the cart. The merchant, he has dates. He doesn't realize that 1 or 2 dates are falling. This old lady's so poor, she goes, she picks up the dates, and she's eating them and putting them in her pocket. She's so old and so poor. He sees this, Abu Saraya, he sees this, and he essentially decides that's enough. We cannot take this. So he starts to grab support. He calls the people. He says, we cannot tolerate this Abbasi regime. And long story short, he initiates a revolt. You can go see. the revolt of Abu Saraya. He goes and revolts, he sacks various governorships under the Abbasid rules, he takes the governors as prisoners, as hostages, and on and on and on, until finally Ma'mun al-Abbasi, he calls his generals, one of whom is probably Harthama ibn Ayun, who was his previous commander. They catch him and they execute him. He is captured and he is executed. All of this in the ending time of Imam Rida alayhi salam, and then Imam al-Jawad alayhi salatu was salam. Al-Imam al-Jawad, in this period, you see what his state is. He is been taken from Medina, first of all. They describe that when he was alone in Medina, Imam Rida is away, he's been taken away. Imam al-Jawad will go outside at the time of Maghrib, it's reported, and he will come back in. And after the sun goes down, he'll come in. One night, he goes out, he doesn't come back in. He's still outside. So the family members, they go looking, where is he? When he finally comes back in, later they call him and he comes back in, they said, what happened? He says, I have just received news that my father has been killed. Imam Rida has been martyred. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Now the imamat falls on this young boy who is 8 years old only. And he is now called up towards Baghdad. So imagine the difficulty. There's lots of detail. He eventually is forced to marry the daughter of Ma'mun, Fadl, a woman who is cruel, not only cruel, but used to living a lavish lifestyle. And now Imam al-Jawad has to tolerate her. And no matter what, he lives his life simply and the way that he learned from his grandfather Rasulullah, irrespective of what her demands are or what her standards might be. And you know that eventually it is probably her, some riwayat say not her, but some say it is her, that like the wife of Imam al-Hasan al-Mujtaba, she poisons him. She gives him grapes. He used to like a certain type of grape. She laced them with poison. She poisons al-Imam al-Jawad and he is shaheed. Imam Hadi, he takes over in a very difficult moment because not only are these revolutions going on, but there are the revolutions of a man named Yahya ibn Umar al-Talibi. Yahya ibn Umar al-Talibi is a descendant of Ja'far al-Tayyar. He comes in the same manner, sees the oppression of the Banu Abbas. By now, Ma'mun has died. Ma'mun left Mu'tasim after him. Mu'tasim has now been removed or died. Mutawakkil has come. Mutawakkil al-Abbasi was one of the cruelest of the Abbasi Khalifs. But it so happens that the Islamic nation spread the largest in his time, strangely enough. So now in the time of Imam al-Hadi, he's having to deal with not only all these revolts that are taking place, and you've got this despotic ruler who's on top of your head, but someone asks the question that Imam Hadi, why didn't he support all of these revolts that were taking place? Why did the Imams not come forward and lend credence to these revolts? Yahya ibn Umar al-Talibi is the descendant of Ja'far al-Tayyar. There is some connection, filial connection to the Ahl al-Bayt. Why not give them the support, say the Imam of the Shia is supporting them, and push everyone to join, to remove the Abbasids? The Imams remain silent. And why I am pointing this to you is because you see the wisdom and the leadership of Imamat. Imam remains silent, absolutely, and the people estimate or assume that the reason is because if the revolt fails and it is crushed, which inevitably it was, then they will point and say, this is not true Imamat. If Imam was really Imam and he had supported and given word and sanctioned the revolt, then Allah would have supported him and the revolt would have succeeded, the Abbasids would have been removed. But Imam is smart, Imam knows. Now why am I telling you all of this? You will see. Because I told you, sometimes the dhulm comes, the batil comes, it covers over the haqq. As long as the flame of haqq is lit underneath, it doesn't matter. That is Imamat. Imamat is that flame that stays lit. You cannot extinguish it. And that flame knows when to rise, when not to rise, when to stand, when to sit down, when to remain silent, when to speak. And so you see that not only in the time of Imam al-Hadi are these revolts taking place, but he's having to deal with people in our community. When I say our, I mean it specifically that even amongst us today, this is a problem, that there are ghulat, there are extremists, there are men like Al-Fihri, there are men like Al-Baba Al-Qummi, others who come and they start to espouse very many things, different things. One of these extremists, he says that Al-Imam Al-Hadi is God. Imam Al-Hadi is God, and that he himself is the door to Imam Hadi. Now, why do you think that he might have done that? Because he wanted money. He wanted wealth. And that's what he was doing. These are people who are followers. And that's why I asked this question from the beginning, that are we doomed to fail? Are we doomed to fail? Is human nature so negative, so mired by the wiswas of shaitan, by greed, by personal gain, by personal advancement, that we cannot create a good world in front of us? And you see these men, Imam, he absolutely disavows them. He writes, he tells all his Shia, be aware of these people, they are nothing but troublemakers, and they have gone outside the fold of what is considered to be our way. They are preaching things that are against our religion, that are, dare I say, apostasy. All these men, this is occurring in the time of Imam al-Hadi alayhi salatu wassalam. So much so that you even see that the revolutions keep taking place. After Mutawakkil al-Abbasi, Mutawakkil, strangely enough, and I know you're getting bored with all this historical details, but I think it's important to know, Mutawakkil al-Abbasi, he eventually is removed by his very son with the help of the Turkish. You know, in those days, what did they do? They were taking these young boys who were Turkish, they were raising them like soldiers. They were called Mamluk. Mamluk means they were owned. They were raised like soldiers. These soldiers eventually grow up and they decide, you know, we don't want to be under the control of anybody. We are actually the strong ones with the weaponry. We have the force. So what they do, they join Mutawakkil's son, they kill him. They remove him. Mutawakkil's son Muntasir takes over. He doesn't last very long. Some say his brother, with the help of the Turkish, removed him out of position. So he is gone, Mu'taz removes him. On and on after this it happens. War of brother against brother, uncle against nephew, on and on it's going on. Imamat in the middle of this is sitting there quietly. Establishing roots, establishing what is necessary. On the surface, all of humanity, all of the Muslim nation is heading in some direction, no? There are Shia amongst them, the Ahl Sunnah amongst them, non-Muslims amongst them. Where is Imamat in the middle of all of this? It is deep, penetrated into the hearts of those who actually believe, deeply. My dear brothers and sisters, you see Imamat has come to us with this very voice, that inside of you there is leadership. Inside of you, each one of you, there is influence. And that's what determines how much we succeed as human beings. What does that mean? There is something called, especially in business models, called the sphere of influence. The sphere of influence, it means either you have influence this big, or that big. 3 levels. Your influence, your sphere of influence, when it is small, or the one that includes the small sphere of influence, is whatever you can directly control, okay? So let me give you an example. My son comes to me. This is a bad example because I can't even control my son. Maybe some of you fathers are better than I am. My son comes, let's assume theoretically speaking, my son comes to me. All of you believe I'm telling the truth, right? Maybe. I got a maybe at least. Yallah, that's okay. My son comes, I tell him, look, do this, it's for your own good. He listens to me. He's a good, obedient son. That is my small sphere of control. It is what I can control, okay? It exists for me and my children and I. My wife has that on me, and I have that on my wife. All right? Don't take that in the wrong way, okay? What you can control, what you can manipulate. And when I say manipulate, I don't mean in a negative way. I mean you can exert some effect on it to direct it in a certain place, certain direction that you want it to go. So that is the small sphere of influence. Every one of us has it. You all have it. The medium sphere of influence, that's a little outside of that, it's something or people or institutions that you can affect, but you can't necessarily control them, all right? Meaning, someone comes to you and says, I need your opinion on this and this. You give them the opinion, they value your opinion, they follow you. But you cannot command them to go and do something. You cannot push them in a certain direction, all right? You know how much effect you have on them. They listen to you sometimes, maybe they don't listen to you other times. The outer sphere of influence is the one that concerns you. It's important to you, it's significant to you, but you have no control over it. Now, why does the problem arise? It's because we assume that that small sphere of influence is, rather than being this big, is this big. And I'm trying to control beyond what is actually in my sphere of influence, outside of it. And when I'm trying to do so, what happens? You create fasad and corruption. Think about it logically, that when you try to exert your control where you don't have it, let me give you an example, and some maybe not like this example. People come, they donate money to the center, lots of money to the center. They're doing so with big hearts, generosity. And when they give the check, what do? A month later they come and said, I gave you such and such, I want you to do this in the center. And when the center doesn't do, they start to complain that I gave you that much money. Irrespective of the amount of money that has been given, this is not in your sphere of influence. The center is not in your sphere of influence. It does not belong to you that you have a sphere of influence. But that action where you have taken your sphere of influence that is this big and made it that big, you have created fasad because you have gone beyond your limit. Have you not? That's why they postulate, they say this in business, that the best of leaders are the ones who know the limits of the sphere of their influence. Where is the small, where is the medium, and where is the large? They know exactly who they can reach, who they cannot, who they can affect, who they cannot. My dear brothers and sisters, I hope you're getting the point of what, now if imagine the greatest leadership is what? Imamat, no? You see the effect of imamat, that why imamat sometimes remains silent and why sometimes it says, no, come here and do exactly this. It is about how we behave, how we act. The sphere of influence changes everything. It changes the dynamic of relationships, how institutions work with each other, and sometimes it reveals to us who are actually close to us and on the same path as us and who are not. You will see very, very clearly that if you cannot influence someone on the right, on the path of Allah, then maybe that person is not with you on that same path. And that becomes revealed very, very quickly in the lives of the Aimma al-Athhar alayhim as-salatu was-salam. Salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. And the problem is, my dear brothers and sisters, that humanity in the middle of this believe, again, and I'm coming to the same point that I have repeated over and over, regurgitated it and beaten it like that proverbial dead horse, that insan doesn't even realize the influence of the world in which he or she lives that is causing them to behave in this manner, beyond their limit. Beyond their limit. So let me come to the final and last study I'm going to tell you. Hooray, right? The very last one. There is something, it's called the implicit association test. It basically allows you to determine how much implicit bias you have inside of you. It allows you to discover things about your own mind that you did not know. There is one of these implicit association tests that decides or shows you, gives you insight into how you see different races. The white race versus the black race. I've taken the test. It's very interesting, very interesting. The results are interesting. The result I got, I will keep that to myself for now, was a little surprising to be honest. It's available. Look it up. IAT, race. You'll Google it. It comes up. It'll take you 10 minutes to do it. And you will see an answer. What does it do? It shows you things that are both good and bad. So like what? Flower, good. Poison, bad. Right? Beauty, good. Death, bad. This sort of thing. It'll give you words. And what it'll ask you to do, it'll flash the word and you have to press good or bad, good or bad, good or bad. Same, it'll just keep randomly throwing and you have to go as fast as you can. All right? Beauty comes up, good. Poison comes up, bad. Death, bad. Flowers, good, etc., etc., etc. You get the point. In addition to that, it starts showing you faces. So it'll show you the face of a white American baby. White American baby, okay? You'll press white American. Black American baby, black American, or African American, and it'll keep going, randomly showing you those faces, randomly showing you those faces. Then what does it do? In the beginning, it only gives you the good stuff on one side, on the right side, and the bad stuff on the left side. The white Americans on one side, the black Americans on the other side. Only shows you each category by itself. Then suddenly it jumbles it up for you. It mixes the good with the bad, the black with the white. And you have to go as fast as you can. Black face, black American. White face, white American. Good, good. Bad, bad, etc. You go as fast as you can. In the end, it gives you a score of your bias towards white or black people. It's accurate. It's strong. Why? Because we make an association between what we consider to be good and what we see on the face of an individual. I already talked to you about this. And sometimes we have this hidden association inside of us that we don't even know is there. It's locked away inside of us. And we've tied in one face to another. One race to a particular type of good model or bad model. Wal-'ayadhu billah. It exists. More than that, what did they do? Let me give you an example. You guys know President Lincoln. President Lincoln, when he was ready to start facing the Confederacy, the southern states who were fighting for the right to keep slavery, he had called one of his men and asked him to make a map of Georgia. And in Georgia, delineate all the places where there were slaves and how many slaves there were relative to free people. So there were some counties that had a lot of slaves, fewer free people. Some had more free people, fewer slaves, etc., etc. They made that map. That map was preserved for a few hundred years, still exists today. So some smart person decided, let me do a study and look at people's bias on race, how people feel towards the opposite race, mainly black people in this case. When they did a correlation of people's racial prejudice against black people, do you know what it correlated with? The map from Lincoln's time. Now you'll say, that's crazy. How is that possible? Lincoln was over 100 years ago. Are there slaves in Georgia today? They're not. So how is it that a map that shows the distribution of slaves and free people in Georgia over 100 years ago coinciding and correlating with racial bias today? Those people who are in Georgia today, are they the same people who were in Georgia then? No, many have probably moved out, their families left, new people moved in. Indeed, there are Muslims in Atlanta has a good strong Shia community, no? So those are not the same people. How is it correlated? When they looked at the data, you know what they found? They found even those people who come from outside and they move to Georgia and they go to a place where in the past there were lots of slaves. There are Confederate flags that are there. There are Confederate statues. And just by virtue of the fact that they see those things, they see the flag, they see the statue, they may hear negative comments about black people in front of them, even though they are not racist themselves. It creates bias inside of them. Imagine, you are not biased, but just by virtue of the fact that this stimuli is coming to you, it's shaping you on the inside. Insan. This is insan. And this is the pitfall that exists in our world today. And this is what shapes us. And that's why you see how people live their lives and how leadership changes those lives. Leadership is so key. I will not go long tonight. Leadership is what determines the success of insan. And when I say leadership, I'm not talking about ordinary leadership. I'm talking about moral leadership. Leadership of morality. Leadership that to some degree is not looking for that recognition. My dear brothers and sisters, there is a difference between someone who stands up and says, I am your leader, follow me, and someone who doesn't say anything but does so by example. That is not Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Why? Because anyone who proclaims as openly as that, to say come and follow, you have to ask about their motivations. And insan definitely is prone to these things. So two things. One I described to you, the sphere of influence. The second thing, my dear brothers and sisters, the world has fundamentally changed. Fundamentally changed. Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam, when he will eat, you know that the man, he came, he sat down in front of Amir al-Mu'mineen, he was sitting there, he pulls out a bag. The man thought he will pull out some money or coins or something. Amir al-Mu'mineen opens the bag, he takes out a piece of bread, he breaks it on his leg, and he eats it. The man, he says, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, this is a very strange act. I have not seen anyone do something like this before. What is the meaning of this? Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says, my relatives, my family, they love me. So they like to give me like some butter or oil to eat with my bread. They spoil me. But for me, those are too extravagant. So I keep my bread and my food locked up in a bag so that nobody can tamper with it. Today, the world has changed in terms of its resources. And if anything determines the success of leadership, it's resources. Believe me. Believe me. In the old days, when I say old days, we're talking about over 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 300 years ago. Was the world a world of plentifulness or scarcity? Scarcity, without a doubt. There were fewer human beings on earth. The earth was vast, the land was vast, but people in general did not have everything at their fingertips, did they? Imagine just the world in which Rasulullah lived. Was there water flowing everywhere? Trees everywhere? Greenery everywhere? No, it was all rock and desert. They had dug wells, there was water, there were springs, there were some farms that had been dug with great difficulty, but to maintain them was not easy. Same goes for the rest of the world. The vast majority of Europe was poor. Resources were not readily available to everybody. So people in those days, when you look back at the history, people believed that the world was sufficient. The world was sufficient. That God had placed enough on here, everything was available for each human being to consume, and that each human being, all they had to do was go and find it, get to the resource, and acquire it in a proper manner. Fast forward to today. Is that the circumstance today? Today, just by virtue of the buying power of the middle class, what do we feel? A false sense of scarcity, do we not? A false sense that no matter how much I get, I still don't have enough. Why? Let me give you an example. Amazon. Amazon is good, no? It shows you all those things you don't have. Come forward, just as I mentioned Amazon. Please stand, brothers, and come forward. They're asking me to tell you to move forward, please. Salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Ya Ali. Ya Ali. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Today, there is something called false scarcity. It means that no matter how much you have, you always feel that you need something more. Is that not the case? Why? Because human production has increased. Industrialization, the shrinking of the world in terms of its communication and connection. Today you push a button, forget about tomorrow. In 1 hour, Amazon has dropped it to your door. They will even kindly and generously come into your house and put it there for you. They asked me to give the code to my house. I said, no, thank you. I don't even give it to my children. Forget about Amazon. Scarcity today has no meaning. Why? Because we have so much that it doesn't matter. That's why when you see leadership today, you have to question, what is the reason why they are pushing a community in a single direction? Because resources, commodities, all have become a swaying point. They have become what determine the direction in which we go. It's not just a sphere of influence of what we can and cannot control. It's about how much we can acquire. And insan, unfortunately, by virtue of his nature, today is being sucked into this. And it's not to say that it is bad that you click the button and you get. It's not bad. Allah has allowed. It's halal. You earn your money halal. You can acquire, you can take, no problem. It is the slippery slope of what it represents. That we sit here and say, I don't have, I don't have, I don't have. Meanwhile, we have much, much more than most others. And our ability to acquire is much greater than others. And that is problematic. And that's why when you talk about leadership, you talk about potential success of the insan, of human race, it has to be about who's influencing who, to what degree, and what every other resource signifies to that. A true leader does not care about resources, does not care about how much is acquired, does not care about what is given to them. That's why the Holy Quran says, وَيُطْعِمُونَ الطَّعَامَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ مِسْكِينًا وَيَتِيمًا وَأَسِيرًا. They give, they feed. They keep nothing for themselves. Why? Because then when the world looks at them, it says these people truly have nothing of their own. They have no motivation for resource. They're not motivated to acquire. That is true leadership. And that is what determines, my dear brothers and sisters, it is not that humanity is doomed to fail. It's that we need a hand that is going to control us and direct us, especially in these times, when there are so many forces that are pushing us in the wrong direction. We need minds, we need innovation, we need drive that is unfettered by bias, that is not driven and motivated by consumption and acquisition. That is the Ahl al-Bayt, alayhim as-salatu was-salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. That's why it is reported that the companion, he comes to Al-Imam as-Sadiq alayhi salatu was-salam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. Imam as-Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, where have you been? He says, I have been traveling. He says, Yabna Rasulullah, I've been sharing the things that you teach us, that you have taught us. Imam as-Sadiq alayhi salatu was-salam, he says, what have I taught you? Tell me. The man, the companion, he says, Yabna Rasulullah, the first thing you have taught us is that the world is looking, people of the world are looking for someone beloved to them, someone who is dear to them. But that inevitably, that beloved person dies and goes. That's why you have taught us to make Allah our beloved, because Allah will never leave and go. Allah will always be there. Imam, he says, this is a good answer. What else? The man, he says, Yabna Rasulullah, we have seen that people in the world are chasing after honor and dignity. And they are doing so by pursuing wealth, by pursuing this, by pursuing that, big house, etc. But you have taught us through the Holy Quran, Inna akramakum indallahi Atqakum. The most honored and dignified amongst you in the eyes of God is the pious. So we, based on your instruction, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, have chosen piety and not chosen to find dignity and honor elsewhere. Imam Sadiq, he says, that is a good answer. What else? The companion, he says, we have seen the world, people of the world, chasing after amusement and play and things of triviality. Yet you have taught us that the Quran says, وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ وَنَهَى النَّفْسَ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ فَإِنَّ الْجَنَّةَ هِيَ الْمَأْوَىٰ. You have taught us from the Holy Quran that whoever is the one who wants Allah, they disregard their own desires and amusement and lowly whims, because then Jannah is the reward that is given to them. Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu was salam, he says, it's a good answer. What else? The companion, he says, and this is a good one, I hope you're all listening. He says, people of this world, they save their money and their wealth because they know one day they're going to need it. They put it in a bank account, in a savings account. They save away the money because they know on a rainy day when the disaster strikes, when the trial happens, that they are going to be able to go into that savings and save themselves. The companion, he says, you have taught us that مَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يُقْرِضُ اللَّهَ قَرْضًا حَسَنًا فَيُضَاعِفَهُ لَهُ. Whoever gives a goodly loan to God, God is going to multiply it. So he says, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, instead of saving our money elsewhere, we have given our money in savings to Allah. Allah will give us multiple. This is leadership. This is humanity. Again, he's not saying don't save money. Understand the meaning of what he is saying. Imam says that is a great answer. That is a wonderful answer. What else? The companion, he says, people are chasing after majesty by trying to acquire this and acquire that, and they're trying to surpass each other. And when they see this person has more, they try to match what this person is doing. But you have taught us, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, that the Holy Quran, it says, نَحْنُ قَسَمْنَا بَيْنَهُمْ مَعِيشَتَهُمْ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. The ayah, it says, Allah is the one who has decided how much each person should be getting in the hayat dunya. So Ya Ibn Rasulullah, we have decided based on your teaching not to be jealous or envious of anybody. Let everyone excel in the way they want. We will choose the path that God has chosen for us. Imam, he says, good answer. What else? The companion, he says, people have created so much enmity with each other. They have enemy with this person and that person. This person is my enemy, I hate that person, and enmity has gone. Yet you have told us, إِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌ فَاتَّخِذُوهُ عَدُوًّا. The Quran, it says that shaitan is your enemy. Take him as your enemy. So we have no enmity against anybody. We have no enmity against anyone. We have recognized that shaitan is the perpetrator of that animosity, that anger, that hatred. Imam Sadiq, he says that is a good answer. What else? What else? Imagine at the school of Ahl al-Bayt. The school of Ahl al-Bayt. What a treasure. The companion, he says, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, we see people with different motivations in life. One who is motivated by greed, one who's motivated by this, one who's motivated for his family, one who's motivated for something else. He says, you have taught us that وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. The ayat says, the only purpose for your creation is what? The jinn and the ins is to worship. So we have decided that our goal is to make sure that worship is at the core of everything we do. That is what we have learned. Finally, Imam As-Sadiq, he says, what else? He says, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, other people we have noticed, they depend on their bodies in times of difficulties. They depend on their families or their relatives or their wealth or some other system that is available to them. But you have taught us from the Holy Quran, وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ وَمَن يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ بَالِغُ أَمْرِهِ قَدْ جَعَلَ اللَّهُ لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدْرًا. You have taught us the ayah, this ayah that I have quoted to you from Surah At-Talaq. It is part of second ayah and all of third ayah of Surah At-Talaq. It is extremely powerful. Extremely powerful, and reported in the hadith that the person who repeats this over and over, it develops a cultivation of trust in Allah, dependence. So the companion, he says, this verse that says, those who fear and are pious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will always open a way for them, no matter where they are. No matter how difficult, He will open a makhraj for them. And He will bestow on them from a place where they cannot see it coming. They will not see where the rizq is coming from, the ni'mah is coming from. Allah will give it from an area or a place where they cannot see. And whoever depends on Allah, Allah is sufficient for them. Because Allah will do what He thinks is correct, what He knows is correct. Saying this, the companion goes. This is leadership. This is what we are holding on to. And we are fortunate because human leadership exists today. We have good leaders. But inevitably, as is any human being who is not a ma'soom, they are flawed. And that's why systems are flawed. Sometimes the leader is good, and it is just the surrounding that is too difficult to overcome, so the leader is sitting quietly. Yes? That's why we are fortunate that we have what Allah has given to us. And I'm going to finish with two stories and I will go to the musibah. It is related that once Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam he is sitting with some companions, and the companions are with him, they are listening to him. He says to them suddenly that in this moment right now, if you do a dua and ask Allah for your hajah, your need, Allah will fulfill it for you. They say, oh, amazing. They start doing dua. When they finish, they say, Ya Rasulullah, we would like to tell you what we prayed for. He says, tell. One of them says, I prayed that Allah gives me a long life. Another says he pays for rizq. Another one, he says, I prayed for my children, I prayed for my wife, I prayed for this, I prayed for that. All of these different things I prayed for. My business increases and my family thrives and etc. All of these things. Rasul, he says, this is amazing. These are great answers and great things to pray for and ask for. He says, however, one day if you get a chance, ask Uwais al-Qarani what his dua is. Because his dua is the best dua. You all know Uwais al-Qarani, great companion from Yemen. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam leaves this world. The report says that in the time of the second Khalifa, Uwais al-Qarani suddenly finds himself in Medina. And these same people who were sitting with Rasulullah those many, many years ago, they remember, they see Uwais al-Qarani, and they say, let us ask. Do you remember that time when Rasul said to ask for the dua, and then in that moment, it will be answered, and that the dua of Uwais is the best dua? He's here, let's ask him. They go, they catch him, they sit down, they say, Uwais, Rasulullah told us this and this, and they said that your dua is the best dua. What is your dua? He says, my dua is only one dua. Allahumma abqi lana Muhammadan ila yawm al-qiyamah. Oh Allah, leave for us Muhammad until the day of judgment. Make sure Muhammad stays with us. Abqi lana Muhammad ila yawm al-qiyamah. That is my dua. I don't ask for anything else. Leave Muhammad with us. Imagine the place of this Rasul for us. And that's why when you ask, are we doomed? We are doomed. But as long as the nur of Muhammad is pulling us, at least we have a chance to succeed. He is that salvation for us. And although he left and he went, he didn't leave a void, my dear brothers and sisters, because the report, what does it say? That when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam was born, Fatima bint Asad, she comes with Rasulullah who's a baby like this. And she comes and she puts the baby in Abu Talib's hands. Rasul has just been born. And she says to Abu Talib that, what a precious baby, blessed baby. They knew. They were believers. They knew. It is reported Abu Talib, he says to Fatima bint Asad, he says to her, Amhilini sabtan. Amhilini sabtan atiki bimithlihi illa nubuwa. He says to his wife, give me sabt. Sabt in those days it meant 30 years. Give me 30 years, I will bring just like him, except he won't be a prophet. Give me 30 years, I will bring just like him, except he won't be a prophet. There is no void of Muhammad. He is not gone. Because awwaluna Muhammad, awsatuna Muhammad, akhiruna Muhammad, wa kulluna Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. There is no void in leadership. The hope of insan is in Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The hope of making society better is in Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The hope in each one of us individually succeeding and becoming better is in Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. May I be sacrificed for the dirt under their feet. And you can see it by the actions of those who came from that same tree. And that's why when the departure from Medina was happening, what did they all say? That, Ya Hussein, you have decided to go. We've tried to dissuade you, to stop you, to say stay behind, but you have decided, go, just leave one person behind for us. Who is that? That is Ali al-Akbar. Because the Hashimiyat, the daughters, the ladies of Banu Hashim, when they longed for the days of Rasulullah, they will go look at Ali al-Akbar's face. And yet, his fate is tied to his father. That when they reach close to what is Karbala, they stop there. Imam Hussein, I related to you, that at one point he falls asleep, he wakes up and he says, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. It is from him that we have come and to him we will return. Ali al-Akbar, he comes to his father. He says, Ya Abba, alasna ala al-haq. Are we not on the truth that you are saying, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un? He says, Bala ya bunay. He says, no, we are on the truth. So Ali al-Akbar, he says, إِذَنْ يَا أَبَا لَا نُبَالِي أَن نَمُوتْ وَنَحْنُ عَلَى الْحَقِّ. We don't care. We don't have any complaint that we will die as long as we are on the truth. That is Ali al-Akbar. And you know that on the day of Ashura, that moment comes when Ali al-Akbar has to go. And when he comes and he asks his father, that my father, give me permission to go, hear the answer of this imam. No, hear the answer of the father. The father who looks his son in the eyes and says, I wish you had a son like yourself, so you will know what it feels like to send you to certain death. Al-Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, he says to Ali al-Akbar, you want to go out to the battlefield? First go and bid farewell to your mother. Go to Layla. Go to your aunt Zainab, to Kulthum. One by one, Ali al-Akbar, when he walks in the tent, it is reported that they saw him فَلَطَمْنَ الْخُدُودِ. They saw him, they began to cry. بَدَأْنَ بِالنِّيَاحِ. They began to cry. Why? Because they thought to themselves, has the time come now for you to go? Let us look at your face one time, so that we can imprint on our minds the face of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Aywa Husayna. Saying farewell, he leaves. As he is walking to the battlefield, somebody comes and pulls on his clothes. When he turns around, he sees a little girl who is pulling the robes, trying to stop him from going. He looks down, he sees his sister Sukaina bint al-Husayn. She looks up at him and she says, Ya akhi ya Ali, oh my brother, are you going to that same place where my cousin Qasim went and did not come back? Are you going to that same place where the companions of our father went and they have not come back? Ali al-Akbar consoles her, comes towards his father. Al-Imam al-Husayn fastens the armor on the body of Ali al-Akbar, prepares the scabbard, the sword, helps him get onto the horse. They say that Ali al-Akbar goes out to the battlefield, fighting the enemy soldiers, one by one vanquishing them. They cannot stop him. Imam Hussain, standing on the door of the tent, watching the battlefield, raises his hands to the sky. He says, Bismillah wa billah, أشهد عليهم يا الله فقد برز إليهم غلام أشبه الناس خلقا وخلقا برسولك. Oh Allah, bear witness, this young boy, young man who has gone out to fight them, he is the one most resembling in his character, in his demeanor, in his appearance to your Prophet. وَإِذَا اشْتَقْنَا إِلَىٰ رَسُولِكَ نَظَرْنَا إِلَيْهِ. Anytime we long to see Rasulullah, we will look at the face of Ali al-Akbar. Ya Allah, imnahum barakat al-ard. Deny them the blessings of the earth. فَرِّقْهُمْ تَفْرِيقًا. Make them go in their different ways, separate them and devastate them because they have denied us. Ali al-Akbar is fighting the enemy soldiers one by one until finally one champion, he comes to him. His name is Bishr ibn Ghanim. Bishr ibn Ghanim is fighting against Ali al-Akbar. The flap of the tent opens and Layla, she sees the champion facing her son. She raises her hands to the sky. She says, Ya Radda Yusuf ala Yaqub. Oh, the one who returned Yusuf to Yaqub. Ya Radda Musa ila ummihi. Oh, the one who returned Musa to his mother. Rud alayya waladi Ali. Return my son to me. Ali al-Akbar vanquishes Bishr ibn Ghanim, kills him. They say the fighting has become difficult until finally he returns back to the tents, coming close to Imam Hussein. He says to him, Ya Aba, al-atash qad qatalani, wa thiql al-hadid qad ajhadani. My father, thirst has killed me. The weight of the armor has tired me. فَهَلْ مِنْ شَرْبَةِ مَاءٍ أَتَقَوَّ بِهَا عَلَى الْأَعْدَاءِ. Is there one sip of water that I can get so I can regain my strength and fight the enemy soldiers? فَنَادَى حُسَيْنٌ وَثَكَلَا وَمُصِيبَتَا. He says to him, Ya bunay qatil qalila, فما أسرع أن تلقى جدك رسول الله فيسقيك بكأسه الأوفى شربة لا تظمأ بعدها أبدا. Fight only just a little longer, my son.
Very soon your grandfather Rasulullah will be there. He will give you a drink from his cup. You will never be thirsty again. With the courage Ali al-Akbar, he turns. He goes to face the enemy soldiers, starts to fight them. They come to fight him one by one. He is killing them and vanquishing each one of them until the sound it comes from the army of Umar ibn Sa'ad that, don't you know, this is the grandson of Ali ibn Abi Talib. You cannot defeat him one by one. Surround him from every side and attack him. فَحَمَلُوا عَلَى عَلِيٍّ الْأَكْبَرِ. They say that Ali, he says, that Ali al-Akbar is struck by the sword, by the spears, by the arrows. He slumps over on his horse, but he does not fall down. The horse slowly moves in the middle of the ranks of the enemy. فَرَفَعُوا أَسْيَافَهُمْ وَقَطَّعُوهُ أَرَبًا. They struck him from every side with their swords, cutting him to pieces until finally he fell, calling out, "Assalamu alayka ya Aba." Imam Hussein races to the battlefield, comes to the body of Ali al-Akbar, falls on the body of Ali al-Akbar. My dear brothers and sisters, maybe it is that we imagine in our minds that scene on the battlefield. وَكَأَنِّي بِسَيِّدِي وَمَوْلَايَ أَبَا عَبْدِ اللَّهِ وَهُوَ عَلَى جِسْمِ عَلِيٍّ الْأَكْبَرِ. They say Ali al-Akbar, if he looked to the right, that he will have a smile on his face. But when he will turn to the other side, the smile will turn into pain, a look of sorrow and suffering. Imam Hussein, he says, Ya Bunay, how is it I see you looking this way and smiling in the last moments of your life, and then looking the other way in sadness? He says to him, Ya Aba, إذا نظرت إلى هذه الجهة أرى جدي رسول الله ومعه الكاس الأوفى وقد سقاني شربة لا أظمأ بعدها أبدا. If I look this way, I see my grandfather Rasulullah. He is with me. He has given me the drink of water. I will never be thirsty again. ولكن إذا نظرت إلى هذه الجهة, if I look on the other side, أرى جدتي فاطمة الزهراء. I see my grandmother Fatima. وهي تنظر إلى جروحي والدم السائل من بدني. She is looking at the wounds of my أنا ولعنة الله على القوم الظالمين يا حسين.
कहती थी ये माँ खून भरी मैयत से लिपट कर, है अली अकबर, है अली अकबर। अरमान था पहनाऊंगी पोशाक शहानी, अफसोस के रास आई न तुझको ये जवानी, कैसा था मुक़द्दर है
इतना तो जरा ठहरो तुम्हें दूल्हा बना लूं, फिर एक झलक सहरे की सुगरा को दिखा लूं, बेचैन है ख़ाहर है
अली अकबर है अली अकबर।
माँ तेरी जुदा में भला कैसे जिएगी, माँ तेरी जुदाई में भला कैसे जिएगी, मर जाएगी सुगरा जो खबर तेरी सुनेगी, अब क्या करूं दिलबर है
अली अकबर है अली अकबर।
18 बरस पाल के परवान चढ़ाया, 18 बरस पाल के परवान चढ़ाया, वो गेसुओं वाला है मेरा खून में नहाया, अब क्या करूं जी कर है
अली
अकबर
है अली अकबर।
कहती थी ये माँ खूं
भरी मैया से लिपट कर है अली अकबर
है अली अकबर। तुम हिचकियाँ लेके जो दम तोड़ रहे हो, तुम
हिचकियाँ लेके जो दम तोड़ रहे हो,
मुँह से हमेशा के लिए मोड़ रहे हो, क्यों रूठे हो दिलबर है
अली अकबर है अली अकबर। कहती थी ये माँ खूं भरी मैया से लिपट कर है अली अकबर
है अली अकबर। पहले तो एक आवाज पे उठ जाते थे बेटा, पहले
तो एक आवाज पे उठ जाते थे बेटा,
अब इतनी सदाओं पे भी पहलू नहीं बदला, क्या हो गया दिलबर है
अली अकबर है अली अकबर। कहती थी ये माँ खूं भरी मैया से लिपट कर है अली अकबर है अली अकबर।
माँ तेरी जुदाई में भला कैसे जिएगी,
तेरी जुदाई में भला कैसे जिएगी,
मर जाएगी सुगरा जो खबर तेरी सुनेगी, अब क्या करूं दिलबर है अली अकबर है अली अकबर।
कहती थी ये माँ खूं भरी मैया से लिपट कर है अली अकबर, हाय हाय अली अकबर।
18 बरस पाल के परवान चढ़ाया,
18 बरस पाल के परवान चढ़ाया।
वो गेसुओं वाला है मेरा खून में नहाया, अब क्या करूं जी कर, हाय हाय
अली अकबर, हाय हाय अली अकबर।
कहती थी ये माँ
भरी मैयत से लिपट कर,
हाय हाय अली अकबर, हाय हाय अली
अकबर।
पहले तो एक आवाज पे उठ जाते थे बेटा,
तो एक आवाज पे उठ जाते थे बेटा।
अब इतनी सदाओं पे भी पहलू नहीं बदला, क्या हो गया दिलबर, हाय हाय
अली
अकबर, हाय हाय अली अकबर। कहती थी ये माँ खून भरी मैयत से लिपट कर, हाय हाय अली अकबर, हाय हाय अली अकबर। या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन।
घोड़े की गिर के जब अली अकबर ने दी सदा, अपनी कमर को थाम के शबीर ने कहा, कड़ियल जवां की लाश उठाने चले हम, अरे सीधी हुए कमर तुझे अब्बास की कसम, कड़ियल जवां की लाश उठाने चले हैं हम, सीधी होए कमर तुझे अब्बास की कसम। ये इम्तिहान ज़ईफ़ी में मुझको निभाना है, हाय अकबर को लेके खैमा में ज़ैनब में जाना है, रस्ते में लड़खड़ाए ना शबीर के कदम, सीधी हुए कमर तुझे अब्बास की कसम, कड़ियल जवां की लाश उठाने चले हैं हम, सीधी होए कमर तुझे अब्बास की कसम। गुर्बत पे अपनी रोया है खुद इब्ने फातिमा, हाय गिर गिर के टेकियां है ये मख्तल का फासला, बस गम से दूर लाश है अकबर की 2 कदम, सीधी हुए कमर तुझे अब्बास की कसम, कड़ियल जवां की लाश उठाने चले हैं हम, सीधी होए कमर तुझे अब्बास की कसम। लाशा है इस कदर के लरजते हैं मेरे हाथ, हाय लाशा है ये रसूल का अकबर के साथ साथ, 2 लाशें एक साथ उठाएंगे कैसे हम, सीधी होए कमर तुझे अब्बास की कसम, कड़ियल जवां की लाश उठाने चले हैं हम, सीधी होए कमर तुझे अब्बास की कसम। सीने में क्या तोड़ी है जालिम ने ये सिना, अब देखना हुसैन की निकलेगी कैसे जान, जालिम को ये बताना है इब्ने अली है हम।
सीधी हो ए कमर तुझे अब्बास की कसम, रीड वन मोर, घड़ी अल जवां की लाश उठाने चले हैं हम।
अस्सलाम वालेकुम या अबा अब्दुल्लाह, अस्सलाम वालेकुम या अब्ना रसूल अल्लाह, अस्सलाम वालेकुम या अब्ना अमीर अल मोमिनीन, अस्सलाम वालेकुम या अब्ना फ़ातिमतुज़ ज़हरा सय्यदत निसाइल आलमीन, अस्सलाम वालेकुम या शुहदाए करबला खुसूसन सय्यदी मौला या अबुल फ़ज़ल अब्बास, अस्सलाम वालेकुम या उख्ती हौरा ज़ैनब सलामुल्लाह अलैहा, अस्सलाम वालेकुम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू, अस्सलाम वालेकुम या गरीब अल गुरबा, अस्सलाम वालेकुम या मुईन अज़-ज़ुअफ़ा वल फ़ुक़रा, अस्सुल्तान या अबुल हसन या अली इब्न मूसा रज़ा, अस्सलाम वालेकुम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू, अस्सलाम वालेकुम या साहिब अल असर वज़ ज़मान, अस्सलाम वालेकुम या शरीक अल कुरान, अस्सलाम वालेकुम या इमाम अल इंस वल जान, अलमान 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 मिन फितनतिज़ ज़मान, अज्जलल्लाहु तआला फ़रजक व सहलल्लाहु तआला मख़रजक व ज़हूरक व जअलना मिन अंसारिक व आवानिक व शियतिक व मुहिब्बिक। अस्सलामु अलैकुम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू। थैंक यू।